Go ahead
This
and get
conference
started.
will now be recorded.
I can't find my gavel.
Use your thumb.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining our special board meeting this morning, West Basin Municipal Water District. It is now 10:04. And I'll call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. And Mr. General Manager, do we have any public comments?
Yes, good morning, President Williams, members of the board, members of the public, and staff. We do have a public comment. We have a couple of requests, and additionally, I sent a letter received late yesterday from LA Waterkeeper and representing some other parties regarding the urban water management plan, which we are reviewing and will take into consideration, and it's also been sent to our legal counsel. As far as speakers for this morning, we do have our good friend, haven't seen her in a while, Kelly Clark, has requested to speak with LA Waterkeeper. Kelly?
Got a question just before we do that.
I beg your pardon?
You know,
Mr.
we have
Chair?
a public hearing on that,
Yeah.
on the urban water plan. Does she want to speak during the public hearing or
Whatever your
public
preference.
comments?
Yes, Steve, what's the preference?
Mr. Chair, I'd recommend that any comments on the urban water management plan be taken during the public hearing. Item 3, public comment on our agenda is for matters that are within the board's or the district's jurisdiction, but not necessarily on the agenda. So if anyone has anything that's not related to the urban water management plan, now would be the time to speak. But if their comments concern the urban water management plan, those comments should be given during the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay. So we can move to presentations. In that case, there are no public comments that are not regarding the urban water management plan, which is coming right up. So, in presentations, we have none today, President Williams.
Action calendar.
Likewise, President Williams, we have nothing on the action calendar.
So the only thing we have is the information calendar, which you have the 2020 Urban Water Master Plan public hearing. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if you would care to open the hearing, and then we can address the comments, I guess, at that point.
Okay, well, then that takes us to the public hearing. And first of all, has the public hearing been properly posted and noticed?
Yes.
All right. Then at this time, I declare the public hearing open regarding the adoption of the 2020 Urban Water Master Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan, to receive a report from staff and to consider comments from the public and the board. Is there a staff report?
There is a staff report, and I think we would probably like to hear the comments from the public first, if that's okay.
If the public wishes to speak now, they can.
Okay, so we do have, I see Kelly Clark from LA Waterkeeper. It's been a long time, Kelly. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you as well.
Right.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on West Basin's Urban Water Management Plan for 2020. My name is Kelly Clark, and I'm speaking on behalf of LA Waterkeeper this morning. First, I want to commend West Basin on its leadership in the field of water recycling and urge it to continue its innovation in further driving progress in this area. Particularly with DPR on the horizon, I urge West Basin to continue to maximize the opportunities for reusing our water supplies. Second, I want to applaud West Basin for creating a plan that addresses water needs in the territory without having to resort to harmful, climate impacting, and needlessly expensive water supplies like ocean desal. Desal should only be an option of last resort after all other possibilities have been exhausted, which is not the case now. And while West Basin's UWIMP cites desal as a potential way to reduce reliance on imported water, It makes no sense to replace an energy-intensive source of water, like imported water, with an even more energy-intensive source like desal that drives global warming and harms economically disadvantaged communities by raising water rates. LA Waterkeeper urges West Basin to instead focus on multi-benefit solutions like increasing conservation and to reflect additional potential for conservation in its UWIM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, our next request we have is from Melanie Rivera, also from the LA Waterkeeper. Melanie, are you on the call?
I am, thank you.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Good morning, board members. My name is Melanie Rivera, and I'm also speaking on behalf of LA Waterkeeper on the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. I just wanted to start out saying that LA Waterkeeper really appreciates the opportunity to comment and all that West is doing to enhance local and sustainable water supplies. We also appreciate most of what was outlined in the plan, but we felt that there were a few shortcomings. So first, while the plan stated that ocean desalination was still being investigated, it described and listed desalinated water as a potential supply source throughout the report. Ocean desalination is the most energy-intensive, expensive method of meeting supply needs, yet the plan failed to describe numerous climate and marine impacts it causes. If the supply source is going to be described in the plan, we request that its harmful impacts be described as well. But given the plan claims 100% reliability for all of its future water year types, we recommend that ocean desalination be described as an option of last resort or be left out entirely. We believe that West Basin should focus its efforts on expanding local and climate-friendly water supplies, an example being partnering with other agencies for direct potable reuse, and only resort to ocean desalination once all other sustainable avenues have been explored and exhausted. The plan also overestimates future demands, even though recent trends show a decline and decoupling from population growth. Overestimating demand can lead to unnecessary investment in new infrastructure, so we recommend including at least one scenario in which declining trends are incorporated. We recognize that the plan is largely a regulatory obligation for water agencies, but it also sends an important message about priorities and a vision for our future. We've seen the impacts of poor water planning on our environment, climate, and communities, but also what we can achieve when we put our mind to it. So we ask that this agency uses this plan to send a bold message for a truly sustainable, climate-friendly, and local water future that will benefit all of our region. So thank you for your time and for your consideration of these comments.
Thank you, Melanie. President, we also have a request from Craig Cadwalader from the Surfrider. Craig, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, President Williams and board members and staff. My name is Craig Cadwalader, and I'm speaking on behalf of Surfrider South Bay. And first, I'd like to say, I, as you know, am a major fan of West Basin, and I am most impressed by the leadership you've shown in recycled water. And I would like to see that expanded more. We know that the pumping facility at Hyperion has a capacity with the addition of another transformer of some 90 million gallons per day. And the projections shown in the Urban Water Management Plan show only going to 65 to 70 MGD by the year 2040. To me, I would like to see the full capacity exploited and used to our advantage through the Edward C. Little recycling plant, and also to have a more focused consideration of direct potable reuse, which we understand is coming roughly by 2023. While we understand that ocean water desal is a viable option, but we consider only as the last resort. So we would really like to see the Edward C. Little plant expanded to full design capacity, and for those projections to be included in the Urban Water Management Plan. Right now they are flat, and we would like to see more of an increase. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes. First of all, I want to just mention again that we did receive a letter. I see it signed by Melanie Rivera. Thank you, Melanie, for your letter from the LA Waterkeeper, which we received last evening. And we would also, that will be considered as the comments in addition to what you made today by our team. I believe, President Williams, that concludes the public comment part of the this presentation. And I think I'm ready now to turn it over to our manager, EJ Caldwell, who has a PowerPoint presentation on the draft urban water management plan.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Patrick, President Williams, members of the board, and guests here today. This effort has been a great deal of time and I would say love of water as far as bringing this item to you. It is a statutory requirement, but this does provide staff as well as the board a great opportunity to really evaluate where we are as far as supply and demands. Let me first begin by introducing our team. We have assembled, I think, one of the best teams as far as putting together the urban water management plan. And that begins with Rob Morrow, a professional engineer from Water Systems Consulting. He has been our project manager and he is a senior water resource engineer at WSC. We are also lucky enough to have Lisa Madaus from Madaus Water Management. Some of you may recall that she is considered to be one of the experts as far as water use efficiency, water planning, and currently is one of the expert panelists on the Metropolitan Water District Integrated Resources Plan. We also have Heather Freed, a professional engineer with WSC, as well as Lizzie Wiley, an engineer in training also with WSC. And last but not least, I would like to recognize the efforts of Matthew Vey, a West Basin staff member, who recently joined our department over here on the water policy side and has done an exceptional job of working with our consultants and putting this draft plan together. Most of you might recall that the Urban Water Management Planning Act requires that urban water suppliers prepare and adopt an updated urban water management plan every 5 years. The 2020 Urban Water Management Plan summarizes water supply planning for a 25-year period in 5-year increments. This identifies potential supplies needed to meet existing and future demands. One new aspect of the Urban Water Management Plan this year is the requirement for water suppliers to produce and adopt a water shortage contingency plan. You'll notice that this item includes 3 aspects. We do have the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, which was included as attachment A. We also have a 2021 water shortage contingency plan, as I just mentioned. And then, of course, we have an appendices to the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan, which deals with our delta reliance or reduced thereof. So with that, Mr. President, I would be happy to begin the presentation that we have for you today, as well as our guests.
Please.
Hazel, are you able to bring up the presentation, or would you like me to?
Just a second, DJ. I think Hayes is bringing this up right now. Okay, just when you're ready, just say next slide.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, thank you everybody for being here. If you could turn to next slide. You can see our agenda here. We will provide an overview of West Basin for our guests. We will discuss the requirements of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. I will then hand this over to our experts to discuss our demand projections, supply projections, and our water shortage contingency plan, as well as an overview of West Basin's reliance on Delta water, and then, of course, discuss next steps. So I know that those of you from West Basin Municipal Water District know that our mission is to provide a safe and reliable supply of high quality water to the communities that we serve. We are governed by 5 elected board members covering each specific divisions throughout the West Basin service area. West Basin has a very diverse community. We represent 17 municipalities as well as unincorporated portions of LA County. You can see that we represent as far north as Malibu, inward towards West Hollywood, and then all the way down to the Palos Verdes Peninsula. West Basin as a wholesaler has a unique responsibility and relationship with the communities that we serve. We do serve several different individual retail agencies. Here you can see that those include California American Water, California Water Service Company, Golden State Water Company, the municipalities of City of El Segundo, City of Inglewood, City of Lomita, City of Manhattan Beach, and up towards the Malibu area, we do serve LA County Waterworks 29. And then of course, we also have non-retail customers, including the Water Replenishment District. So the Urban Water Management Plan, as I mentioned, is a 25-year look ahead of our supply and demands. They are updated every 5 years and are submitted to the Department of Water Resources as required by statutory requirements. It promotes coordination with local and regional stakeholders. It supports long-term water supply and drought planning, provides framework for water efficiency and drought response, and is a prerequisite for certain loans and grants that we can access through the State Water Resources Control Board and the Department of Water Resources. There are several different major requirements of the Urban Water Management Plan that are new this year. It does require a layperson's description of reliability, requires a long-term forecast for each water supply source, including climate change and supporting information, a 5-year drought risk assessment, and the water shortage contingency plan with prescriptive elements. The key information that's included in the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan includes a description of West Basin and its service area, an evaluation of West Basin retail agency and groundwater replenishment demand, an assessment of current and projected water supplies, an evaluation of the reliability of water supplies, a comparison of demand and supply projections, the water shortage contingency plan, as I've mentioned, and a description of demand management measures implemented by West Basin. Here you can see an outline of the Urban Water Management Plan, which has been placed on West Basin's website. But for today's discussion, we will be focusing in on our specific efforts related to the water use characterization, water supply characterization, the water supply reliability and drought risk assessment, as well as the water shortage contingency plan and Delta reliance. This year brought about many different challenges, along with the pandemic here, working remotely with our consultants. We do have several new requirements, as I just mentioned, that were required in the Urban Water Management Plan. Secondly, the Department of Water Resources provided their final guidance only in on March 26th of 2021. As such, West Basin's staff and consultants did an excellent job of working with Department of Water Resources staff and really preparing for what was needed in this Urban Water Management Plan. Third, the submittal deadline is the same for wholesalers and retailers. As such, West Basin's retailers are actively in the process of producing their Urban Water Management Plan for adoption. Therefore, West Basin staff, as well as our consultants, will be reviewing those plans afterward. As such, there will be further analysis specifically related to their supply and demand analysis. And lastly, West Basin Municipal Water District has undergone several different planning efforts, including the Water Recycling Master Plan, a recent Water Use Efficiency Master Plan, and those documents, as we were producing them, were instrumental as far as the development of the Urban Water Management Plan. So here we have our water supply diversification today. You can see we're reliant on imported water for about 60% of our total demand. Recycled water, non-potable and replenishment is produced for 16%. Groundwater potable for our cities and retailers, you can see at 13%. And then of course, nobody would second guess West Basin's water use efficiency efforts, and we've seen a consistent reduction as far as water demand goes. Here you can see an overview of West Basin's many water use efficiency and conservation programs. Demand management is very important to West Basin Municipal Water District, and West Basin boasts programs that meet every different sector, including residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional. So I think we heard a little bit about this in some of the public comments. The 2020 Urban Water Management Plan findings. West Basin has a reliable supply for normal, dry year, and multiple dry years based on supply and demand assumptions. As we move forward through this presentation, you'll see that as far as imported water goes, West Basin is reliant on Metropolitan Water District and the data that they've provided in their Urban Water Management Plan, which provided us, I think, the opportunity to kind of analyze potential supply of imported water and find that it meets our demands. Projected increase in recycled water use for non-potable reuse and replenishment. I think that this was referenced in several of the public comments, but West Basin Municipal Water District does have several plans as far as moving forward with our water recycling effort. And while it does not detail the specific partnerships as requested in one of the comment letters, I think that if you look at the data within the draft urban water management plan, you can see a significant increase in groundwater usage, as well as an increased use of recycled water for replenishment and purple pipe. The future of this program, West Basin's water recycling program, will require future partnerships, and we hope that those who commented today will be able to assist us in partnership as far as building out and expanding West Basin's water recycling efforts. And lastly, we recommend tracking retail unit demand trends and groundwater use trends. As we've discussed in the past, the use of groundwater supplies has diminished over the several years. West Basin has been tracking this, and we continue to track it. And once we adopt and submit the Urban Water Management Plan, West Basin staff, as well as our consultants, will go back and return to these Urban Water Management Plans of our retailers to get an in-depth look of their future supply demands. So West Basin committed to a coordinated effort in the development of the Urban Water Management Plan. You can see we held a stakeholder workshop there in March 4th of 2021, but we also held numerous individual meetings with Metropolitan Water District, as well as each individual retailer, to talk a little bit about our projections and get a little bit of information as far as their projections go. Equally as important were our internal coordinated meetings with West Basin staff. And I do want to highlight this because I think it's important to note the great work that our engineering and operations team has done as far as providing us with the data that's needed to really look at the use of recycled water in the service area. And then, of course, you can see off to the right, West Basin staff and our consultants utilized numerous, not only internal, but external documents as far as putting together the data that we'll be presenting today. Lastly, and this I think is most important, is our communication with all of our municipalities and our retail agencies. You can see that we provided everyone with notifications of this process, as well as reach out to two, I think, important stakeholders, and I think it's noted that they are here today. So we sent out specific notifications to Surf Rider as well as Waterkeeper. So with that, I'll be handing this over to our expert, Rob Morrow, and I will stay on the line to answer any questions and as we move forward with this presentation. So Aheza, would it be possible for you to hand over the reins to Rob?
Okay, just a sec. I get this presentation coming up. All right. You guys see the PowerPoint okay? No problems?
Yes.
Okay.
Looks good, Rob.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll jump in here. So, again, I'm Rob Marr with WSC, and it's been a pleasure working with staff on this, and look forward to walking through the numbers here. So, demand projections for West Basin, you've got your retail demands, your retail customer demands, and replenishment demands. So, we'll start with the retail discussion. This is demands for the last 20 years. The bottom line is West Basin sales, and that includes imported water, desalted groundwater, and non-potable water. So these are sales to your retailers. And then the top line is adding on your retailers' groundwater pumping. So that's the total retail demand. And those are two important numbers because obviously the blue line is sales from West Basin, but the total demand is what we're really looking after. And what you can see here is a downward declining trend, but you've got a lot of ups and downs in here. You had the Great Recession driving down demands, and then the slight recovery starting to happen, and then the drought kicks in and drought restrictions in 2014. And then those restrictions were pretty flat since then. And then 2019, we had a really wet year, so that drove down some outdoor demands. And 2020 with COVID we don't know what to do with those numbers right now. Still figuring that out. So I mention all that because the driver behind this is projecting demands, and projecting demands isn't easy when we haven't had normal conditions in a bit. So I'm going to talk about some of those uncertainties that we tackled. So there's four main categories. One is growth. So that's population growth, economic growth. And our projections here align with Metropolitans of what they included in their 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, which was actually just adopted 2 days ago. And what's driving them is the latest numbers from SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments, for economic and population growth. And what's driving those is the state's regional housing needs assessment. And there's a lot of new housing across the state, and so it's a fairly aggressive number relative to recent years, and so that's one of the drivers for near-term growth. The second is returning to quote unquote normal demands, and that's outside of drought. What are customers? What's their normal demands without the social pressure, without high rebates being put out there? What's normal use? And one of the questions is because normally when you come out of a drought, water use increases, but a lot of people have taken out lawns, and there's different things that we are tracking to see where those demands will go. And in this case, we took a slightly lower projection than Metropolitan's projection. They included some data from pre-drought restrictions, and we assumed the normal demand would be the average demand from 2016 to 2018, which is an increase from where we are today. I'll show you these numbers all put together in a sec. The third item is conservation, and again we aligned with Metropolitan's Urban Water Management Plan. They have a very sophisticated demand model. The passive conservation is what happens with when you're not doing anything. When someone buys a new toilet, it's got lower flow than that one. The one that's in place, or when you buy a new washer, it's got a lower flow. Active conservation is when you put dollars to those transactions, or you give away toilets, or you have high rebates on washers. And then price effect conservation, which is as prices go up, customers tend to use less water. And so that's also built into the long-term model. And the takeaway there is we have near-term growth from housing, projected housing growth, and a return to normal demands. But long-term, generally, conservation offsets any population growth. And so long-term demands are relatively steady. And then for West Basin, one of the key uncertainties is the amount of groundwater pumping. And pumping's been below groundwater rights. The last decade or so. And then there's been new amendments to the West Coast Basin, to the adjudication for Central and West Coast Basin that allow even more storage. And so there's questions of how much that's going to be implemented in the near future. So now I've got some numbers. Total use, retail use within West Basin service area was a little over 140,000, 327 acre feet last year. And the projection for West Basin is to increase by about 10,000 acre feet. And again, that's from housing and economic growth, as well as a return to normal demands. And I'll note that if we do go into drought restrictions, which each week more and more places are implementing, those demands will be lower than what we're projecting, because these are supposed to be unconstrained demands. And we are showing in orange there Metropolitan's demand, official demand projection for West Basin that was used in their urban water management plan. And again, we had a slightly lower assumption for the normal demands. So this is the total retail demand projection. A key then is how much groundwater is going to be pumped. And so on the left is the historic pumping that's taken place by your retailers. And as you can see, it's declined significantly over the past decade, from about 40,000 acre feet per year 10 years ago to almost to around 20,000 acre feet per year last year. And there's lots of reasons for that. There's some contamination, there's some infrastructure issues, but every retailer we talked to said they plan to invest in expanding and recapturing some of their groundwater production capacity. The biggest question was how quickly and to what extent that would be. And as EJ mentioned, the tough part for the demand projection work we're doing is all the retailers were doing this in parallel and really had little capacity to coordinate in detail. And so we're actually pretty excited after we get through this July 1st deadline and everybody frees up a little bit, is to dig a little deeper into each of the retailers' projections and get a little bottom-up perspective on demand projections, whereas these are more of a top-down approach. So we've assumed a return to about 30,000 acre feet per year pumping over the next 10 years, which again aligns with the discussions we've had with retailers. And then staying flat going forward. The other big piece for West Basin is non-potable recycled water use. So this is non-potable deliveries, direct deliveries to your retailers for irrigation, industrial use, etc. And we've had a continuing increase in use over the last 20 years, and the district's recycled water master plan is under development now, and these values reflect the recommendations in the master plan, which is to implement a lot of these non-potable projects that have been planned but haven't been implemented. And there's a lot of good projects out there. So it's projecting an increase from about 15,000 acre feet of non-potable use last year to about 30,000 in the next 5 years. And again, the Recycle Water Master Plan gets into those specific projects and what makes up those numbers. And I should also mention that these are reuse within your service area. So sales to like LADWP, who's outside your service area, isn't reflected here, even though that's part of your recycled water production and sales. So if you put all those together, we've got 3 demand projections here. The top line is the gray is the total retail demand. Again, you got an increase of about 10,000 acre feet and flattening out. And then the blue is subtracting off groundwater production. And so that would be West Basin sales is the blue line. And so you see that roughly the increase in groundwater pumping, the projected increase in groundwater pumping roughly offsets the increased growth in demand. So there's a relatively consistent use or demand on West Basin supplies. And then the bottom one is imported water, which takes West Basin's demand and subtracts off the non-potable projections. And so we're projecting a decrease in imported water use from Met based on an increase in recycled water use within the service area. So maybe I'll pause there to see if there's any questions before I move on to replenishment demands from any of the directors.
Any questions, directors? Seeing none,
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so then replenishment demands, which is a big component of West Basin's operations. So what this graphic is the last 20 years. The purple is the recycled water you've been sending to the West Coast barrier. The dark blue is the imported water being sent to the West Coast barrier. So you see that decreasing over time. And then the light blue is imported water sent to the Dominguez Gap barrier. And LADWP provides the recycled water to that barrier. And projections going forward, both of those barriers are permitted for 100% recycled water. And both West Basin and LADWP have been working towards improving facilities to be able to do that. So projection-wise, we're looking at, we're assuming, again, 100% recycled water to the West Coast barrier, and that increasing over time. And these numbers are also from the Recycled Water Master Plan. And what they reflect is going beyond just the current the current replenishment at the barrier, and looking at using some of the new storage amendments. And all of this will require partnerships with the Water Replenishment District of Southern California and potentially other suppliers and pumpers. And again, there's more details in the Recycled Water Master Plan as far as the different ways this can be achieved. But it's a great opportunity for West Basin and for the region to get very reliable supplies in the ground for eventual pumping. And I should note the 2020 numbers show a little bit of imported water, and that reflects what was completed last year. But we're projecting in the next 5 years that it will be 100% recycled water at each of those barriers. Okay, so we'll move on to the supply projections now. So West Basin is one key piece in the water supply picture for the region. So we've mentioned Metropolitan provides the imported water. It also provides some conservation incentives. West Basin has been a leader in recycled water, desalted groundwater, and conservation. And then each of the customer agencies have groundwater. They've got other potential local supplies, and as well as implement conservation. And in the end, you've got the individual user, which is who we're trying to predict the demand of. So we've got a little these different puzzle pieces that we're looking at. Now, a key finding that's underlying a lot of the findings in this urban water management plan is that Metropolitan's supplies are highly reliable. And this is after decades of investment in storage and looking at integrated use of State Water Project water, Colorado River water, and storage, and being able to put water during normal and wet years into storage so it can be pulled out during dry years. And the graphic here simply is the bars are the supply capability. Blue is a single year, green is a 5-year drought, and the line is the demand. And so obviously there's a lot more that goes into this, but it simply shows how supplies exceed demands in the scenarios considered. And that directly translates to high reliability for West Basin supplies. And I should note it's even more considering our projections are slightly, or what our Metropolitan's using slightly higher demand projections for West Basin than we're even reflecting in this urban water management plan. Now, I mentioned all the uncertainties with demand projections, and Metropolitan has been a leader in integrated resources management and scenario driven evaluation. And so in parallel with this, with the urban water management plan effort is the IRP effort. And it's considering more lower likelihood but higher impact scenarios and looking at the performance of Metropolitan's supplies along with its local partner supplies in those conditions. And that is not completed yet, but I think it reflects potential conditions in the future, and that the urban water management plan doesn't fully capture because it's focused on a most probable scenario. And so there are certain conditions where new supplies may be available where imported water reliability is much lower. And so that's the importance of the IRP effort is to understand potential future conditions that we may need to address. And then West Basin's award-winning water recycling system, producing over 40 MGD every day, 100 miles of distribution pipeline, 450 connections, designer water, 5 types of water, and a great outreach and effort with 13,000 visitors annually. So the key thing with recycled water is it's highly reliable. It's people flushing their toilets, going to Hyperion, West Basin, taking some of that water and using it day in and day out. And so unlike imported water, the recycled water, even it's declined in total through conservation, but there's still plenty out there to be used, and is reflected also with LA's Operation Next plans to reuse almost all the remaining water. And then we have ocean water desalination. So this follows on West Basin's investment in conservation and water recycling, and is almost 2 decades in the process of starting with pilot testing in the early 2000s, and then the demo test starting about a decade ago that actually informed some of the content within the California Ocean Plan, which is what's the main regulatory driver in implementing desalination. And then started a very thorough environmental review process that concluded with an adopted EIR in 2019. And a key part of that environmental approval is the board adopting it with 5 conditions. And this is the project evaluation phase, which is occurring now, addressing these 5 conditions. There's developing cost estimates, developing a financial evaluation plan, completing a cost-benefit analysis, developing design and project delivery documents, and securing permits. And so there's still many steps to go to implement desal. And again, it's going to be driven in part in what's happening around West Basin, demand-wise, supply-wise, and it's a good option to go to if needed. But as mentioned in the public comments, we have not included desalination as a counted supply at this point in the urban water management plan. Okay, so those are all the pieces. Here's a little look at what different supplies have been used over the last 20 years. So again, along with the demand decline, you see a slight decline in imported water use, a slight decline in groundwater use, and a slight increase in recycled water use. So going forward, we're projecting. Basically, what we did was took the total demand projection and subtracted off the projected groundwater use and the recycled water use, and got and basically back calculated imported water use numbers. And we showed these numbers before, but you can see that the projected decrease in imported water use as a result of increased recycled water production. And so that's the retail side of your operations. On the replenishment side, so we're showing that this is total delivered water. So the bottom two items, the imported water and the recycled water, non-potable water, are the same as the previous slide. And then we have recycled water for replenishment. So it's just showing with increased non-potable use and increased replenishment, total deliveries from West Basin are projected increase by almost 25,000 acre feet over the next 25 years. I think, yeah, so that's it with the supply projections. Is there any questions before I move on to the water shortage contingency plan?
Directors? I've seen none, please.
This is Director Houston.
Director Houston.
Sure, just really fast, Rob, thank you. But I want to understand between this slide and I think the one before it, I see on this slide the total demand is going up over the years, 165,000 some acre feet. But if you go back to the slide before this and see this one stays the same all the way across, at least for projections. So can you enlighten me on that?
Yeah, I would say the next slide is less of a demand. It's more of a deliveries by West Basin because it includes replenishment. So this is an end use total demand by retail customers, by houses, by commercial, industrial. And then this slide is really sales by West Basin, and the replenishment numbers on top are what's driving that increase. And those are again in partnership with WRD and others to help replenish the basin, assuming there's increased groundwater pumping. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, but going back to the slide before this, I mean, basically on the retail demand side, is this, if I'm interpreting this right, it's pretty stable. It's really stagnant. I mean, these numbers are hardly changing, at least these projections, 10, 20 some years out. So am I understanding that properly?
Yes. The general projections are after this projected higher growth in housing, as well as a return to a normal demand, is that the population growth is relatively slow and it's offset by conservation that's occurring.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that encapsulated it very well. So, and this obviously is our service area, which you're saying, and I believe this is pretty accurate, that the population growth is really quite stable and sort of built out, if you will, in the West Basin service area. Not going to, putting in massive amounts more people. Plus, you're getting more efficient. And I see, of course, we're lowering the use of imported water over some time, and then depending on different decisions we make, we could make this graph even change differently. But big picture, we have a pretty stable water demand for many years to come in our area. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you, Rob.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right, so the water shortage contingency plan. As EJ mentioned, they've been included in urban water management plans for a while, but coming out of the last drought, the state DWR added a lot of explicit requirements, and they are being scrutinized more because, frankly, many folks' water shortage plans didn't work out as they should have during the last drought. That's not the case for you or Metropolitan, but it did add a lot of content here, and they, as a technicality, everyone is adopting their water shortage contingency plan separately than the urban water management plan, so that it can be updated more often than every 5 years if needed, based on lessons learned from droughts and others. But as a Met member and as an imported water wholesaler, the picture is a little complicated. So we tried to simplify it a bit with this graphic, because Metropolitan, as the imported water supplier, really controls most of the highly variable supplies. Your supplies that you're controlling of recycled water, conservation, desalted groundwater are very reliable. And then if you add in, well, I mentioned conservation. So Metropolitan Water District has an urban water management plan, water storage contingency plan. Again, both of those were just adopted. And then they've had in place a water surplus and drought management plan, which set 6 stages of drought and talked about surpluses. And then if it gets to the worst position, a water supply allocation plan, which was implemented during the last drought, where reductions are required along with penalties if those aren't met for each wholesaler. And then those are passed along to retailers, either individually or as a whole. And so West Basin has its urban water management plan and water storage contingency plan. We have water storage levels, 6 stages that match Metropolitan's, and then a drought rationing plan, which is the implementation step of when we reach a water supply allocation. And then you have the individual retailers who are at the bottom implementing, trying to meet potential restrictions if those are put into place. Another new thing that all water agencies are required to do starting July 1st, 2022, so a year from now, is report on their supply and demand assessment. So this is a simple, well, not necessarily simple, but the outcome is a simple, do you have enough supply for the upcoming year? Do you need to implement shortages? And again, this is more of a state reporting, the state trying to get a lot of data all in one place of seeing where there's issues for water supply across the state. And so this will be done by West Basin in coordination with Metropolitan. And in the end, each year, the board, it'll be coming to the board for approval and identifying whether shortages will need to be, or shortage actions will need to be implemented. And if shortage levels are implemented, West Basin will follow a similar pattern as was done in the last drought of ratcheting up with each stage. We've got 6 stages, which matches Metropolitan stages, which also matches the standards that DWR published last year. So expanding public information, expanding rebates, implementing new rebates if needed, and calling for voluntary reductions by retailers. And if the last step is, if necessary, implementing or modifying a shortage allocation to retailers. And this is just a little picture of the right. I won't get into all the words here, but of the stages that Metropolitan uses and some of the actions in the middle that can be taken depending on those stages. So on the left is surplus, which is when we're putting surface water into storage for dry times. And then on the right is the steps taken when we need to take water out of storage, with more restrictions happening as you go from 1 to 6. Okay. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay. So last item here before wrapping up is Delta Reliance. So this is a new thing, and I'll try to summarize it succinctly. In 2009, there was the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta Reform Act. What came out of that was several things, but one of them is Delta Plan Policy WRP1, which identifies reduced reliance on the Delta through improved regional water self-reliance. And really, the non-legal summary of this is the policy is saying if you want to use more water from the Delta, first you have to demonstrate you're not wasting water in your own neighborhood. And so the analysis done in coordination with Metropolitan is showing that looking at the use of Delta water into the future and the use of local supplies as part of that. And a unique thing about this is that the act was passed in 2009, but guidelines weren't really established until the past year or two. And technically, the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan was supposed to be in compliance. And so Metropolitan is recommending all of its members adopt an amendment to a 2015 plan that states the exact same thing as the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan on Delta reliance. And the driver behind this is there is a potential for appeals to actions that are related to water in the Delta, such as transfers and exchanges or things like that. And if you demonstrate consistency with the Delta plan for these covered actions, then those actions should not be an appeal to those actions should not be successful. And long story short, there's two pieces that are evaluated. One is increased regional self-reliance, which considers water use efficiency, groundwater use, and recycled water use. And for West Basin, you're showing an increase of supplies from 40% of unconstrained no conservation demand to 67%. And this is with the 2010 baseline. Frankly, if you were allowed to go back farther, because you guys were so far ahead of the curve, these numbers would look even better. But the bottom line is it's showing an increased self-reliance. And then the second bullet's on reduced reliance on water supplies from the Delta. And because Metropolitan works as an integrated operation across all of Southern California, you're not able to say which drop of water West Basin gets, how much is from the Delta, how much is from Colorado River, how much is from storage, and where those supplies are from. But the Metropolitan's projections show their Delta supply decreasing from 27% of demands to 22%. So again, demonstrating consistency with the Delta plan. So that's it there. Before I wrap up, is there any questions on that?
I don't see any.
Okay. Okay, so last slide here then. And this is just repeating what EJ had stated before, that the findings for the Urban Water Management Plan is West Basin has reliable supplies for the projected normal dry year, single dry year, and multiple dry year scenarios. West Basin's own supplies are highly reliable, local supplies, including groundwater. And the imported water reliability is really the biggest question. And so engagement with MET's IRP ongoing process is important to understand any changes to potential reliability. We've got a projected increase in recycled water use for both non-potable reuse and for replenishment. That's detailed in West Basin's upcoming recycled water master plan. Both of those, non-potable use and replenishment, require partnerships with the end user on the non-potable side, and for replenishment with WRD and other potential pumpers and suppliers. And then lastly, tracking retailer unit demand and groundwater use trends, because those are the biggest uncertainties and hardest to predict. And the more we go forward, the better we'll have an understanding of where those trends are going. But as a supplier, and as with a goal of providing high reliability, it is wise to have a slightly higher demand projection in your urban water management plan to ensure that you are making sure you're developing supplies to meet those demands. And I should have mentioned earlier that the work we did going into this is we looked at a whole lot of scenarios of supplies and demands with high demands, low demands, and selected these numbers as a most probable condition, but acknowledge that there are a lot of uncertainties and we'll be tracking those variables going forward. So next steps, the public comment period is closed yesterday, and we're receiving comments and have received comments today. The June 28th board meeting will be coming back and requesting or recommending adoption of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, the 2021 Water Shortage Contingency Plan, and then the amendment to the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan. And the deadline to submit all of these is July 1st. And with that, that's all for my presentation. And I'll stop sharing and let you guys take this back.
Mr. President, I do have a question.
Director Gray?
Thank you. I just want to go back to the presentation and wanted to ask the presenter, what would be the key issue or issues in terms of determining what we would look at in terms of the increase of retail water demands?
Yeah, so let's see, what slide number is that? I just had to jump to it. I think it's slide 24. So well, on one part, it's individual. I guess there's two pieces. There's the individual use, and in a post-drought setting, are folks going to increase water use outdoors, indoors? Is a extreme or a high conservation ethic going to continue? And it's really tough to predict individual behavior. And the second part is growth and how quickly and how much. And so both of those will be getting better data on as we go forward. I don't think we mentioned before that one of the big actions in the last few years, starting with Governor Brown's declaration, is implementing conservation as a way of life in California. And next year, the state board's going to come out with water use guidelines that talk about what targets that individual or each water agency should meet, and those potentially could drive down or be a way to drive down demand. And there may be lower than projected, but we're just getting previews of those numbers right now, and we don't have a good feel of where those are ultimately going to go. And I think in a year we'll have a much better understanding. I guess the second part of that is, as a wholesaler, you don't have access to all the individual account information that your retailers do. And we had hoped going into this we could get into that with each of the retailers, but frankly they were, with the guidelines finalizing almost 2 months ago, they had their hands full just to get to this deadline. And so that's why after July 1st, our plan is to engage deeply with each retailer to understand the individual use patterns and understand if there's some consistency where from kind of a bottom up look, an individual look, where that individual demands may go. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Since we are still have an open public hearing, I want to extend an invitation to anyone from the audience who would like to say some words before we close. or any other board member would like to speak? Okay. All right then. Thank you very much, staff. And I will also like to thank the members of the public who came from LA Waterkeeper, Kelly Clark and Melanie Rivera. And of course, our good friend Craig from the Surfriders for expressing your support of West Basin's recycling program and of course our conservation program. So with that, I will close the public hearing and continue with the rest of our meeting agenda.
Thank you.
Mr. General Manager.
Yeah, thank you, President Williams. Our next item after now the public hearing is closed is a closed session, and I will defer to Steve O'Neill, legal counsel.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, the directors should have in their inboxes an invitation to another meeting that was sent out earlier this morning from the board secretary. And so we need to get off this meeting and convene on the other meeting pursuant to that notice.
Oh,
Does everybody have that?
I had a phone. Is it
No,
a local or phone
there was a
call?
subsequent email sent at 9:58 this morning from the West Basin Board Secretary that has another meeting address on it.
Okay, thank you.
Does everybody have that?
I'll check.
Okay.
Yes, I have it, Steve. I have it.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to jump off this and jump on the other one.
Hey, President Williams, I'm here, you're here. I'm not sure if,
We need one more so we can at least just report out.
right, Steve? So I don't know if Gloria was going to be able to make it back, and then if not, we need Don Deere, because I don't think Desi was going to be coming back. So is anybody able to reach out to Director Deere just so we can make sure he's on this call to close out this meeting?
Well, this is this is a special board meeting.
Right, this was it's 10 o'clock meeting.
Or if Gloria can call in, right? I don't know, something.
We're reaching out to both of them right now.
Okay.
Come on, guys.
Hey, Steve, I have a question for you. Don is driving right now, but he can listen in on his phone. Is that
That would suffice.
okay? Let's see if we can do that. And Gloria is also trying to connect. Yeah, so like I said, we have President Williams and Director Houston and Steve O'Neill. Can we go ahead with that, Steve?
We have Director Deere. Yes, I think we can reconvene in closed session since we have a quorum.
Okay.
Okay, then we will reconvene the board meeting, the special board meeting that was started at 10 o'clock. So.
I believe,
Mr.
Mr. Chair, we're on, I need to
report out.
report out of the closed session, item 8A, conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. The board received a report and instruction was given to staff. That concludes my closed session report.
Okay, thank you. Now that takes us back to
Item 8.
Board, yes.
Or yes, item 9. I'm sorry, Harold.
So item 9, is there any director's comments?
No, thank you.
Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, but by the way, our next meeting, the